think sometimes we lose our answers in search to find them. I think a lot of times we occupy our minds with things that don't necessarily allow us to be present. And I think being present is one of the most important things, not necessarily just because it's fun or it creates some type of peace within you, but because that's the only opportunity we really get to do anything within life. I think if we spend most of our day and most of our time just thinking, then we lose a lot of our answers that could be got in the present, the answers that are already present. I think that the answer is always present, and it's always us who has to find it within the present moment or find it within where we are. And I think our constant thought about whether or not we can do something or whether or not we have the ability or capability, whether or not the path even exists, is just an abstraction from what is. I think the path is wherever you go. The path isn't already charted, it's created with every step that you take. And I think in learning how to take those steps without question, we permit ourselves to actually seeing the direction that we're going. We permit ourselves to actually understand why certain obstacles in the past were the way that they were. And we understand how to sort of face those in the present moment. I think that our constant thought is sort of the obstacle that we encounter on our path. It's like we're creating constant things to jump over rather than actually just taking the steps where we are. And in creating these constant steps, I think some of us think that we push ourselves into a certain amount of development. But I think we're really just pushing ourselves to a certain amount of discomfort. And I think there is a sort of growth with discomfort. I think as long as we become comfortable with it at some point. And I think I've gotten to a point where I am pretty comfortable with my expression, pretty comfortable with the way I am, pretty comfortable with uh, walking the path without question. And I think that sort of granted me enough freedom to actually be where I am and understand why certain actions take away from what I'm doing, why certain viewpoints and certain thoughts can take that away too. When we don't monitor or don't pay attention to our thoughts, then they surely pay attention to us. I think we can't create at the same time as analysis or at the same time as analyzing. And what I mean that by that is I think a lot of us want to create certain lives and certain paths within ourselves. We want to be able to walk on a certain path that's defined and created by us. But I think we can't create that path at the same time as constantly analyzing ourselves and capability. I think we are the question that we need to answer, and our constant questioning of ourselves takes away the answer. To say the answer is already present is to say the answer is within you at all times. Your happiness isn't defined by the exact environment or circumstance that you're in. It's defined by how you define your circumstance and environment. And if we can recognize that it's always about our input to the situation, then we have to learn how to input ourselves into a situation. And I think more so, understand what we input into ourselves. I think we need to be careful in what we consume, what we feed ourselves, what we feed our minds. Because at the end of the day, it becomes what we are. And I don't mean that to say that who you are is just a thought. But I think if we can't separate ourselves from our thoughts, then we might as well be. I think the beauty of life is sort of created in the absence of thought. It's the acknowledgement of the world that's sort of existing outside of our minds. And I think the mind is a beautiful thing as well. I think humans in our ability to create it and express ourselves in certain ways and understand ourselves and come into the world and sort of contribute to it in ways that are unique and special is beautiful. But I think sometimes we take away the beauty of the world that already exists. We take away the answers already present in thinking that we have to question the sounds that we hear. And when I say question the sounds that we hear, I'm really talking about the idea that, sometimes silence is the best answer. We want to know what peace feels like. We want to know what peace sounds like, and this, and the other. But if we're constantly occupying our minds with thoughts and trying to define peace in terms of words instead of accepting what peace is in the present moment, then we're always going to find abstractions from it. It's like we're looking for words to define something that is sort of beyond it. And I think to be present is to sort of live in a world beyond words. It's to not limit yourself to some type of confinement. I think a lot of times words are separation. And I think the separation is useful. It's the way we label things, it's the way we define things and understand things to a certain extent. But I think we shouldn't lose our understanding of ourselves in the words we use to define who we are. I think who we are is beyond comparison and beyond the words that we use to compare ourselves to other people. What does it even mean to be better than someone? What does it mean to be worse than someone? I think if we can recognize that we are all individuals and all have our own unique, complex lives to live, then there really is no comparison to be had at any time. Of course, there are certain things like LeBron might be better than me at basketball. But I don't think that's, cause enough for me to not like basketball. I think it's the way we take away from ourselves in reference to our perception of other people's greatness or other people's life or success or path that takes away our ability to walk our own. And I think it's when we learn to listen to the answer already present that we actually understand what our path truly is, or we at least give ourselves an opportunity to walk it long enough to find out. I think that, to smile and watch is a beautiful thing. And I realized it even more recently. Like I was on a walk the other day and I was thinking about thought itself. I was thinking about how much we find comfort in the things that we think because they're so familiar and oftentimes they're very habitual. I think the thoughts that we have on a regular basis, I think probably like 80% of them are repetitive, or things that we think the same things over and over again and every day. And I think we use those things to define our growth in any current moment. But I think if we would learn how to exist in a world without constantly thinking about our place within it and accepting our place within it, then our growth would just be characteristic of us being in the moment. And it wouldn't really matter how we tie up in reference to this, that, and the other, but how we reference ourselves to now and how we feel now. I think sometimes we jeopardize our ability to be happy in the moment because of how we were sad in the past. And we think that we have to go through a bunch of hoops and turmoil in order to reach some type of happiness and peace. And I think that's sort of unbefitting. I think if we can learn to sort of live in the world and live in the unknown, we'll find that comfort really isn't defined by the thoughts that we have of a situation, but our ability to not overthink a situation, our ability to not limit what is to the words we have to describe it, or even the words we have to describe ourselves. Because we think that we are impatient, we think that we're unfit, that we feel unfit and impatient. And I don't mean that to say that it's just the words that make us this ways, but it's the way we've accepted certain connotations, certain labels, certain narratives into our character, into who we are that allow it to be part of who we are. And I think until we give ourselves an opportunity to sort of dispel that, then we're constantly going to be in a sort of rut with ourselves, grasping at straws, grasping at parts of ourselves when the totality of who we are is in the present. You don't need to constantly think of every aspect of yourself and how this relates to that, how that relates to this. I think each time we have a feeling, it's a truly beautiful thing to be able to feel anything that's not, I heard this quote one time, to be able to feel anything that's not self-pity or self-loathing is a beautiful thing. That includes sadness, anger, this, that, and the other, because it gives you an opportunity to see some answers, to see why this makes you feel this way, to see that you feel this way because of this. And until we recognize that there's always more to explore, we're going to think that we've already found some type of end. And when I say the answer is already present, I don't mean that the answer is solid. I don't mean that it's not changing. I just mean that it's only within the present that we ever get an opportunity to do anything and experience anything. So I don't think that our abstractions are going to bring us towards a real answer. I don't think constantly focusing on the negative aspects of ourselves is going to create positivity. But us being present enough to recognize how we are negative and giving ourselves a chance in the present moment, because we have a choice within it to do something positive that actually contributes to our growth and positivity. And I think once we do that for ourselves, then it doesn't really become about thinking at all. And this may just be what I'm thinking in the very moment, or maybe what I guess period of life I'm in. But I found a lot of comfort in not constantly labeling everything, not constantly connoting everything and trying to relate it back to myself. Everything already relates to you because you're a part of everything that you experience. Until we give ourselves that liberty, we're constantly going to be living in our ego's relationship to everyone else. That person did this, so I feel this way. These people didn't tell me this, so I feel this way. But that doesn't mean anything. You can feel happy just because you want to feel happy. You don't have to tie your emotional states and happiness towards some specific action or goal. You know, you can feel happy for something that might happen tomorrow, but it hasn't happened yet. And that's not to say it's going to happen or it won't happen, but to say that we can obviously give ourselves a certain amount of happiness without reference to material things. We reference our expectations so much that we think that it's the specific item that gives us that happiness, when it's really how we feel about it, when it's really how we feel about ourselves in reference to whatever that something is. And that's why I think the answer is already present. Because when we're present, we also get an opportunity to recognize how we value things in proportion to ourselves. And, I was recognizing a lot in my past, I was valuing other people's opinions and perceptions more than my own in a way. Not to say I didn't care for what I was saying, not to say I didn't care for what I was thinking, but I thought my thoughts and my care had to live in reference to other people's care and thoughts. And I think sometimes we get into this mentality that we have to constantly improve ourselves, or we have to be taking part in the constant construction of who we are. And I think to some extent we are constantly in construction, but I don't think that's something we always do with effort. I think as long as we are intent in what we want to be, if I want to be a better person, then it's about being present enough to recognize opportunities to be a better person and accept to myself that it is. I think that if we already knew the answer, or to know the answer, the only way to truly affirm it is to no longer ask questions. And I don't mean that to say no longer be curious. I think it's important to have curiosity for the world. But I think it's also important to recognize that answers can only be found where you are, or in your ability to find them where you are. And if you can't find them now, then you don't need that answer right now. You just need to be where you are. And we don't have to reference our happiness to the answers we find either. It shouldn't really be about that. Like, in my life now, I'm trying to implore and explore happiness without reference to anything else. Like, I don't think it matters what anyone does or how this event goes or how that goes. It's just about how I feel when I'm right here, when I'm with myself, how it feels to be me. And that's something that I get to decide, not something that everyone else gets a say in. And that doesn't mean that I'm trying to be narcissistic or only focused on a singular viewpoint, but recognizing that all viewpoints have permission to exist, including my own. Everyone has a complex life, and I also have my own as well. And I think in acknowledging that, I'm also giving other people the liberty to express themselves as they do. And by accepting that they have their own complex life and I have mine, you grant everyone else a certain freedom. Because it doesn't matter what they do, because it's not in reference to you. It's always in reference to them. People might do stuff for you, and I think that's important. That may be reference to you. That may be something you can take. But it's really just they care about you, or they feel this way about you, so they did this. They thought that you might appreciate this, so they did this. And it's about appreciating those things. Appreciating those opportunities you get when people do go out their way while referencing themselves to help you out, to give you some type of appreciation, to give you some type of love. And I think it's the love that we give ourselves that truly allows us to accept love from others. Because it doesn't become about, oh, they love me because of this. Why do they love me because of this? But love is truly just acceptance. And if we learn to accept ourselves and learn to accept others for the way that they are, then we really have no reason to force anybody to be anything but who they are. And, I say that to say we have to learn to accept what is. Because what is always going to be the answer, not what was. You want to find out what you need to do in order to heal from the past. But the past isn't going to teach you that. The past might teach you how you became hurt in the first place. But any remedy or any healing has to be done in the present. It has to be administered where you are. If you wait to heal yourself, or you wait to even look at the pain or look at the cut that you have, you risk it being infected. And I say that not to say that you have to be scared or constantly jump on everything that causes you pain, but to recognize that pain is an invitation. Pain is an invitation to give yourself more attention. in a certain aspect, and understand the answer that's also being brought about by your pain in reference to whatever it is you've experienced, and understanding how your experience is being tailored and cultivated by how you're looking at the world, and more so, how you're looking at yourself. All that to say thank you. I really think it's important for us to sort of grant ourselves an opportunity to be where we are. I think that's sort of the most important thing I'm thinking about right now is not living in my mind. You want to be in the world so much, so what's the opportunity granted to you by being in your mind at all times? What can we gain by constantly overthinking about things that are right in front of us? Can I do this? If we don't know and we don't want to answer for ourselves, then the only thing we can do is figure out. And I think in our figuring out, we have to learn to not reference ourselves to our failures and successes. A success isn't a person that doesn't fail. It's a person that doesn't demean themselves in reference to failure. It's a person who gives themselves a certain amount of affirmation and validity before they go out there and find something valid. It's about someone who has value before they get things that are valuable. It's about learning to hold within you all the things that you want to gain in the outside world, especially just in terms of feeling. All that to say thank you. Keep being y'all, keep being great. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, doing what you can, what you have. I hope you guys are taking care of yourself, and a lot more on the way, a lot already here. Thank you.